Would Trump be mad to invite Vlad to the White House? It could happen, actually, sooner than you think. Then again, it may not happen at all. Let's go to John Roberts right now at the White House with the latest on this maybe invite. Hey, John.
Trish, good afternoon to you. The last time that President Trump and President Vladimir Putin of Russia spent any substantive time together was at the G20 summit in Hamburg last year. They also saw each other at the APEC conference later that year, but did not have a bilateral meeting because the two leaders thought, well, there wasn't that much to talk about. Now it seems like there was a lot to talk about because, according to Sarah Huckabee Sanders, as the president himself confirmed on March 20th, hours after his last telephone call with President Putin, the two had discussed a bilateral meeting in the not-too-distant future at a number of potential venues, including the White House. We have nothing further to add at this time. So the two presidents talking about a potential meeting here at the White House. It would be the first time that President Putin has been to the White House since 2001 when he visited President Bush in November of that year. Now, word of this first emerged from the Kremlin and seemed in a way to be somewhat smacking the White House around a little bit for the announced expulsion of the 60 Russian diplomats and intelligence operators. A spokesman for the Kremlin, Yuri Ushakov, saying, quote, against the backdrop of these events, talking about the expulsions, it's difficult to discuss the possibility of holding a summit. The announcement by Russia today appeared to be more political posturing than anything. Ushakov also saying, one day, at one time or another, we can arrive at the start of a serious and constructive dialogue, and that a meeting, quote, would be rather important and beneficial for both countries as well as for the entire global community. Now, one country has already come forward, Trish, to say we'd be happy to host a summit between the American president and the Russian president. Serbia has come forward to say we've got some room in Belgrade. If the two leaders would like to meet there, we'd be happy to have them. We'll see. Stay tuned.
Indeed, we will. Thanks so much, John. Well, is a possible meeting between President Trump and Russian President Putin the right or the wrong move, whether or not it's at the White House or not? Let's go right now to retired Lieutenant Colonel Bob Maginnis. Good to see you, Colonel. Should he sit down with Vladimir Putin right now?
Yeah, well, Trish, keep in mind the Russians have thousands of nuclear weapons. They just tested ICBM. They're talking about hypersonic cruise missiles. Putin had the State of the Nation speech just a month ago and really hyped this stuff. You know, you need to sit down, even if your enemy, and I consider Russia an enemy, is doing things that you disagree with. There's not much trade, but there is a nuclear difference and a standoff. In fact, President Trump's gone ahead and asked the Congress to consider small nuclear weapons because the defense minister in Russia said earlier this year that they're going to move forward with the idea of first nuclear use, de-escalation, what they call it. These are dangerous things that we're talking about, and we have to deal with them. And plus, the New START treaty is about to expire, and the 1987 INF treaty was violated by the Russians. They need to talk.
Okay. So they need to talk. But let me just ask you this. Do you really think it's going to accomplish much? I mean, I hear you, and I think talk is always good. I actually am a proponent of him sitting down with Kim Jong-un. That said, you know, Vladimir Putin, he's definitely playing chess, as are we. So do you accomplish much in one of these, you know, meetings where you have a nice little photo op?
Well, there are two ways of thinking about this. In 1961 in Vienna, Austria, Kennedy sat down with Khrushchev. And as a result, I would argue a year later, Khrushchev took a risk and we had the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. That was a bad outcome. But they went in not understanding one another and had different agendas. This president is a very strong president. He got something from President Xi of China, last year. Perhaps he'll get something from Kim Jong-un in a month or so. But with Vladimir Putin, he's an autocrat too. He's not to be trusted. So we need to sit down.
I don't think any of them are, right? I mean, certainly not going to trust the likes of Kim Jong-un either.
You're right. We can't trust them. However, not to talk to your enemy, I think, is naive in a world which is incredibly dangerous today.
Yeah, I hear you on that. So maybe some good can come out of it. And I guess you got to kind of figure really, could it be all that bad? Especially if you're going to sit down with the North Korean dictator. Anyway, it's good to see you, Colonel. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Trish.
You know, Neil is back tomorrow, everyone, and you can come watch me on Fox Business, where you see me every day, 2 p.m. on the Intelligence Report there on FBN. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we get a better market day than we did today. I'll see you tomorrow.
I'm Dana Perino, along with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Juan Williams, Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The 5. No more deals on Dreamers. President Trump spending part of his Easter Sunday fuming over Democratic roadblocks to his immigration agenda. He's now urging Republicans to use the nuclear option to pass new border legislation. He says DACA is dead because the Democrats didn't care or act.
Mexico has got to help us at the border. And a lot of people are coming in because they want to take advantage of DACA. And we're going to have to really see. They had a great chance. The Democrats blew it. They had a great chance. But we'll have to take a look.
His press secretary, Sarah Sanders, followed up on Fox News earlier today.
The president made multiple offers on DACA. He wanted to see something get done, and Democrats refused to actually put something on the table or work with the president to get anything done. They wanted to use DACA recipients as political pawns. Look, the president wanted to make a deal. He made 2 incredibly generous offers that went far and above even what the previous administrations had done on DACA, and Democrats still refused to make a deal. And I think it's because we're getting close to an election. They don't want to see the president continue to win like he has for the last year and a half.
Jesse, I'll go to you first. There's a debate of who killed DACA, right? So the Democrats are saying, well, he killed DACA, they killed DACA. I think the truth is it wasn't going to go anywhere before this midterm election. Anyway, everyone's going to try to utilize this for their advantage in the midterms.
Exactly. You know, President offered a very generous proposal, and Crying Chuck denied it several times. That's fine. The reason we're in this situation is because President Obama put forth DACA, and he knew it was unconstitutional because for the 2 years beforehand, he'd said, I wasn't allowed to do it as president. Then he changed, and he did it. It was challenged in the courts. It was about to get rejected. So the president comes along and says, let's have Congress deal with immigration law because that's the right place to deal with immigration law. So he comes out and he puts forth an arrangement, which I thought was overly generous. It was $1.8 million amnesty in exchange for wall funding. That was rejected. So the president tried to make it a broader solution and say, okay, let's put things that the American people want on the table. Merit-based immigration system and doing away with the visa lottery and with chain migration. 75% of the country believes that. That was rejected as well. So we're now in a situation where the Democrats are going to campaign in the midterms as the Republicans hate Hispanics, and the Republicans will campaign in the midterms as the Democrats want illegal immigration and open borders, and we're just going to see which narrative wins.
Here's that DNC Deputy Chair Keith Ellison to that point on what he thinks of it.
Back when Trump ended the DACA program back in September, I knew he wasn't going to do anything about it. He never had a plan for trying to fix DACA, and he turned down several bipartisan deals. It was always a game. It was always a trick. He was never arguing in good faith.
Juan, the president did put a pretty generous plan on the table for not going beyond the DACA kids to say that there would be up to 8 million that he would be willing to do basically an amnesty for, and it couldn't get done. Is it fair to say that for the Democrats that this as an election issue is better for them than solving the problem?
No, I think in fact, the Democrats would like to crow Dana that they have solved the problem and saved the Dreamers. And what you see is, in fact, the proposal that the president put forward didn't even have the support of enough Republican votes in the Senate to get passed. So Republicans didn't back what the president had proposed. No, he didn't. He
needs 60.
Oh, he needs
had 36.
60.
He needs 60. It's
he
tough.
had 36 Republicans, so he didn't even have the 52 Republicans behind him. I think what struck me was how little relationship there is between what the president was tweeted and reality. He says these people, there's a caravan, as you know, of people from Honduras, Guatemala, trying to make their way up to the U.S. border to request asylum because they're fleeing from the crime and the chaos down there. And the president says these people are trying to take advantage of the Dreamers. Well, they can't apply for a Dreamer status. There's no relationship. But he makes it as if it's one. And then he goes on to argue as if somehow...
It is related, Juan.
Oh, tell me.
Well, because if you cross the border illegally as a migrant seeking asylum, you will get special treatment, and they'll consider you for amnesty.
No, they'll consider you for asylum.
Yeah, well, amnesty or asylum, you still get to stay in this country and have protected status.
Well, there's nothing different. I'm sorry.
Yeah, under consideration.
Right. So there's a huge difference. In order to qualify for DACA, Jesse, you have to have been in the country. You have to come into the country at a very young age.
There's no argument that not having a border wall and having the DACA situation still in play does attract illegal immigration from the southern
Kimberly,
border.
if you're being technical, then yes, these people, they're applying for asylum are children being brought across the border by their parents. But it is true that there is this caravan. It comes around every year. This is the 5th year this group has tried to do this, and we try to deter them. So I'm like, you're not going to get asylum here. Like, you might be able to try to apply for it. And Nikki Haley was actually in Honduras just this past spring and saying, like, we want to help you solve this problem at its source, but you're going to have to partner with us.
Well, isn't that reasonable, though? I mean, she's going right to the source of the problem and saying, look, we'd like to partner with you. We'd like to find a positive solution for this. But nevertheless, you can't just, flagrantly violate the law and then expect for the law to show you consideration at expense to others who are comporting themselves in an appropriate manner and following the legal guidelines. Nobody's trying to, step on anybody's dreams or hopes or ability to get into this country. What people are against is illegal entry. And let me tell you something. The president was giving the Democrats, and they missed a great opportunity here to take advantage of this positioning, and of what he wanted was to get the $25 billion for his enhanced border wall, and instead they went ahead and passed on it for political reasons, which is a disservice to everyone, because really it was 80% of what they want. Okay, and he just was saying, listen, we got to slow it down about this in terms of chain migration and this lottery system, and put some more specific standards and practices, a little bit more structured, to make sure that the right people are getting in and this properly background vetted, etc. That's not an unreasonable request. What's unreasonable is the obstructionists on both sides, to be quite frank, because people acted like political party pigs, and they wanted everything they wanted on their plate without an ability or reason to compromise. And now this is what we have. So, the president didn't kill DACA. I mean, I think that the Democrats killed it, and people who were too entrenched in their own political belief and weren't willing to compromise.
Wait a second. Who killed DACA? Wait a minute.
The president did not
ended
kill
DACA? President Trump.
No, he did not.
Oh, he did.
Well, they had the opportunity
that's really what it's going to come down to, a sort of a tit for tat. You killed it, no, I killed it, whatever. Basically, it's not getting done before the election.
Yes. It's like Murder on the Orient Express. They all killed DACA. Yes, I ruined the ending for you.
Thanks,
okay, Agatha Christie.
I love Agatha Christie. I love all of her paperbacks. Anyway, I believe this group that is helping these Honduran refugees, or whatever you call it, were hired by Trump. Because it is perfect.
True.
Again, here is just a singular example that underlines the necessity for a plan, which is a wall with a door, which is what Trump's talking about. Waving in a group of illegal immigrants is not a plan. Wall with a door is a plan. So this actually, again, validates his concerns over a weak border. Even Mexico knows that this is wrong. They've deported tens of thousands of Hondurans. And yet this is, hey, come on through. So again, it validates him. And then back to the point about DACA, who killed DACA. I think the Democrats sacrificed the people they've used as pawns for so long just to score against Donald Trump. This Trump deal would have solved everything, but they didn't want the solution unless it involves a humiliation of Trump. Because Trump was giving, was it 1.6 million?
No, he was willing to go, but he was willing to go up to 8 million. And it's not the first time that the Democrats did this. I think if you go back to 2007, when that deal was on the table, they blocked it then too.
And I don't know, if Donald, in business, if the deal gives you what you want, it doesn't matter if you don't get along, right? You can get a deal with people you don't like. But in politics, there are no such rules for this. You can kill a deal and get rewarded for it because it rewards your side. There's no political consequences to this.
And to your point about the responsibility of both parties scuttling this deal, if you look at the Republicans, a lot of those people in the pocket of big business, they want certain amount of open borders because they want the cheap labor for the companies to come in. And the Democrats obviously want open borders because it means more votes and more amnesty. Meanwhile, the middle-class American workers are getting hosed, and the body politic suffers from this, and our national security suffers because you have no idea who's coming in the country. Like Greg said, in Honduras, that border with Mexico, they have a fence on that border too, about 500 miles, and we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars sending it to Honduras and Mexico to make sure they secure that border and make sure that they root out the corruption and try to help their economy, because right now it's such a disaster, it's spilling over, and no matter what we spend, we're still getting, I think in 2016 we stopped 200,000 Central American illegal immigrants crossing through Mexico into the United States. That is a lot of people.
It's one of the reasons I looked up the Honduras trip that Nikki Haley took, the UN ambassador. There was basically several areas. One was combating drugs and gangs, which is one of the things these people are fleeing from. Economic ties are super important. Venezuela, again, another huge problem, and a lot of people in South America concerned about that. But also remember, it was Honduras and Guatemala were two of the only countries that supported the president on his push to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
So I just wanted to jump in and say, Jesse, we have hit a 47-year low in terms of people crossing this border that you and President Trump want to, I think, create alarmist rhetoric about. Secondly,
well, Juan,
let me
if it's 300,000 people they're catching, how many are they not catching? You think that's a small amount of people? Let me just say the number, the percentages, the actual counts, they don't vary. I mean, this is a 47-year low. They've been using the same count for 47 years. A lot of
years.
that's thanks to Trump's rhetoric about building a wall and stopping it.
Well, then he should take some credit.
Spiking back up again,
The second thing to say here is these people are coming seeking asylum. In other words, as Dana was just describing the situation in Honduras, this is a humanitarian crisis. And we as Americans have created a system that allows people to apply for asylum.
Okay, you're absolutely right. People should apply. But there's a bit of, just because they are closer to us isn't fair. There's plenty of people who should be in front of them who happen not to be on our borders. And I could go through them. We know where they are. But I just came up with an idea for a CNN town hall.
Oh, no.
Not for Fox News, but for CNN. Why, when you talk about all these things that are going on in the world, why is his approval rating still moving up? That's worth discussing. Like, why is it? Is it because of progress on North Korea? Is it because of immigration? Is it because of being tough on China? Is it the Second Amendment threat? Is it the collusion theory dying? Is it terror? Is it a stormy backlash? All of these variables exist, and it kind of makes you think, he might be doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I got him.
Oh, my God.
That was my point.
You know why his numbers, first of all, the guy's at a record low in terms of approval rating.
Just said 50. Rasmussen had him at 50. You like polls? You like polls? I gave you 150%.
Obama was in the same poll at the same time of his presidency.
Not only is he,
I knew your head would explode.
Not only is he at a record low, but I think that a lot of this, Greg, has to do with people saying, well, he's the president. We're patriots. We're going to support the... But you know what?
That's a terrible reason.
Yes, I agree.
To support your president because you're patriotic.
No, but all of a sudden that happened. They woke up. They're like, patriotism.
No, they wake up. The guy's numbers still are terrible.
He's at 50. It's getting better.
The Gallup poll today had him at 39. Just like a little cover.
No, that's very little cover. No.
45%.
The point I'm trying to make is that every one of these issues that people are throwing out there has a rebound effect, and that's what's happening. And Americans are looking at this, and they're still looking at the assumptions that Trump makes, which is, I'm going to be tough on immigration, law and order. They like that, and then all these other things that are going around, like collusion stormy, they're creating a backlash. He's up at 50%.
Oh, please.
A collusion storm.
And 50% in Rasmussen. That's true.
We get you.
Basketball legend Charles Barkley is angry with President Trump and his supporters. You're going to hear why next.
Every time you hear that song, like the feel my face when I'm with you.
Every now and again, Charles Barkley pops into the news cycle with some kind of tirade against President Trump. The former NBA star now says he's never been more angry and disgusted with the president because of his tweeting and staff changes. And Barkley's unloading on his supporters, too.
Nobody ever wants to look in the mirror and say it's my fault. I think he reached a demographic that won't look in the mirror and says my life sucks because of me. Then he came right after President Obama, and there were some people like, wow, we got a black president. They're not happy with that.
Wow. All right, Dana, first of all, Charles Barkley is a basketball player.
Oh.
Okay, he played for the Sixers and the Suns. That's the game where you shoot the ball into the
Got
hoop.
it.
Got it. All right. So, second of all, one of the biggest mistakes you can make when you're doing, political analysis, and trust me, I know what I'm talking about here, is that you never go after a candidate's supporters. That's, I think, crossing
Did
the
you
line.
learn a lot from that, Dana?
Thank you. Yes, very helpful. I'll use it in my future.
Please.
I do think that life is too short to be mad at people who made a choice based on a lot of. It's not like we didn't litigate the 2016 campaign for 2 years leading up to it, and people were clear-eyed about the decision, and they might have decided, well, I can't vote for her. I'm going to give him a shot. Like, when? Why not? Give it a try. I do try to listen to them though, because I feel the resentment. I hear it. I don't feel it personally, but there is a resentment there that is unfortunately, I think, pulling people farther and farther apart. But Hillary Clinton learned that lesson when she said deplorables in September of 2016. She was denigrating an entire group of people rather than pulling people together, and it's not helpful.
Not helpful. So, Greg, Trump flipped 217 counties that went for Obama in 2012. Does that all of a sudden make people, not racist after 4 years?
It's an irrational comment for him to make, but that isn't news. Guaranteed, if Barkley says something you hate, wait 5 minutes and he'll say something you love.
So
because he said, even in that tirade that he did, he actually said some things that were actually pretty good about, like the Russian thing, the Stormy thing. He talked about looking in the mirror. He should look in the mirror because he's talking about himself. He is just like Trump. He's an opinionated trash talker. He's run into trouble in his past. He has considered entertaining a career in politics. He would be another Trump. He's upset about Trump tweeting. Charles won't keep his mouth shut if he's president. and I think people, and Charles is probably in the back of his head thinking, man, I could have done this. I have a past, but Trump proved that a past doesn't matter. I could have actually been the governor of a large state or run for president, which may happen, Charles.
Yeah, he's a very authentic and likable guy. And to your point, he did mention something about whether the Russia story was a big issue, and we have that. Let's hear it.
You don't think the Russia thing's an issue? I do not. I think it's probably true that they got, but I'm pretty sure in every election, state, local, national, somebody can get some dirt on somebody if they wanted to.
So you think it's a distraction?
It's definitely a distraction. We have spent the last year talking about Russia every single day. Now we got Stormy, now we got another girl, and I'm sitting here saying, when are we actually going to help the people?
Oh, Juan, Charles makes a good point there.
Well, I thought that was the best point he made. I mean, to me, the idea that you need to pay attention, I think he mentioned our schools, he mentioned Puerto Rico. The whole idea that even DACA, he mentioned, we should do something to help the Dreamers. So I think on that level, let's really help people. What he says is the purpose of government, and he thinks that we're not doing that job. And I guess that means, by extension, since Trump is president, Trump isn't doing it. But I thought what really struck me was, on some level, we're in the midst of, again, culture wars, and nobody goes to Charles Barkley for political expertise. He was endorsing Doug Jones down in Alabama as a guy who at one point thought about running for governor in Alabama as a Republican. So I think people say, well, it's Charles Barkley, it's a celebrity. We'd like to hear what our celebrities say. But why we take it to heart as, oh boy, this is big news, I don't know. But he is much more than a basketball player or former basketball player at this point. I think he is maybe the preeminent basketball analyst in the country. He does not only the NBA, but also the NCAAs. And he's very popular. But, I just think it was interesting, but I don't know that it's of any great consequence.
Well, people do like listening to Sir Charles, Kimberly. He's not just a basketball player. He's always said interesting things about politics, pretty in touch with the people.
Yeah, I think that's what everyone's saying at this table. So he said a few things in there. It's like my Halloween candy. There's some in there. I'm like, yum, love it, candy corn, Peeps,
Peeps.
Yeah,
Shout out to Peeps.
I love the Peeps.
You're pro Peeps.
Yes, and then there's like that Almond Joy Mounds thing. I don't like that not at all.
Anti-coconut.
Totally. Only on my skin and, like suntan lotion. So he's like that. There's like a whole bunch of good stuff in there. There's a few things like, man, maybe I'll toss that one out. But I think he's a thoughtful person, the way that he comes across. He thinks about things. And I totally agree with him about the Russia collusion. It's just been ridiculous, like Russianitis. And in terms of, what he's saying about the Trump supporters, that I don't like so much. Because I think, a lot of people made choices, and people made choices to go with President Trump and with his agenda and reject that of the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, which was sort of really the establishment that was back in there holding court for a while. So, I always like to listen to what he has to say.
Holding court? Well said, KJ. Ahead, this protest isn't getting much coverage. A student walkout in support of the Second Amendment. Up next.
Well, we saw the March for Our Lives a couple of weeks ago, and on Friday, a group of 75 students at a Central Florida high school walked out of class in support of gun rights and the Second Amendment. Here's one of the students who organized the protest.
It was important to me because the other walkout that happened on March 14th for the Parkland students turned political and was big support for gun control. And personally, I don't believe that gun control is the best idea. Everyone has the right to have their own opinion, and I believe that our right should have just been expressed. In the beginning, it was a very big risk to step up and do this. It took a lot of fight with our school to get them to approve it and support us, but in the end, they did support us.
Okay, so it's good to hear some different viewpoints, isn't it, Greg, on this subject matter?
Well, what's interesting is the media praise for the earlier protest was portrayed as independent of ideology. People would come forth and say, "Isn't it great that teenagers are going out there and they care about something that's good?" Well, if that's the case, then you should have equal praise for this. If you are independent of ideology, you should say there are kids out there talking about gun control, there are kids out there talking about guns rights. Isn't it great that all these kids are out there? But I don't think you're going to see that in the media. On a personal note, I am very, very skeptical of all teenage activism because I was one. I worked on the nuclear freeze, and when I was in high school, I did it for extra credit. I got signatures to ban nuclear weapons from being transported in California. I know that I wasn't thinking about it clearly. I know that I was naive, and I was doing it for romantic and for extra credit purposes.
That'll get the girls.
But the point is,
nuclear freeze always works.
But you have to understand, nuclear freeze and gun control arguments are the same. In the sense that you're saying, my God, these weapons are for killing, therefore they are wrong, and that's naive. Because when you grow up, you realize they exist primarily to protect you with the risk factored in.
Yeah, and to prevent war.
Right.
And them being used.
And just protect your house.
As a deterrent. That's why we also have like jails and a justice system. So you say, uh-oh, if I mess up, I'm going to go there. Go to the big house. Okay, Dana, what do you make of this?
Well, I love civics education, and studying the Constitution sounds like a really good idea to me. And you can disagree with it, and I loved listening to her because she'd obviously thought it through. And they were able to get their school to agree, they had to persuade them based on some sort of logic that they were able to do that. What I would recommend is that the debating association, they choose a new topic every semester for students for the high school debating teams. And I think that gun control or the Second Amendment should be the one that they do next year and let these kids argue it. But when you are on the debate team, you don't know if you have to argue pro or con. You have to be well versed in both. And then you can make your decision at the end of the day. It'd be a useful exercise, and I'd love to hear what they have to say.
Okay, perfect. Very good idea. Helpful hints from Dana. Great point, Journal. Okay, good.
I support both walkouts. One, because if I was in high school, I'd walk out if I didn't have to be in class. And two, you want kids civic-minded, and that's a good thing. Although I think
you want them to buy your future book.
Exactly. In 2030.
Come to your party.
And, yeah, you come to my
party.
That's so sad. I'll take anybody. But I would say I think it's the kids that walked out just recently, I think shows more bravery because it was very easy to walk out a couple weeks ago, but to walk out on a pro-Second Amendment platform takes a lot more guts, and here's why. Students during the first walkout, some were actually physically assaulted for holding up signs supporting the Second Amendment. One kid was suspended for staying inside the classroom. Other kids were sent home because they didn't want to participate. With that said, Scott Israel's the real villain here. We really know why, and that we've been over it 1,000 times. And any day now, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement is going to come back with its decision after the investigation into what went wrong, and he may be fired or suspended. And Rick Scott has taken action with the Florida legislature. They've raised the legal limit for gun purchases, 18 to 21. You have to wait now 3 days before you purchase a long gun, and they ban sale and possession of bump stocks.
Well, he's been quite proactive about it and vocal about it, right from the beginning. I foresee in our future a Greg monologue on Sheriff Israel.
No, I hope
decision comes down.
Yeah, any day.
Wait for it. Okay, Juanito.
Well, everything you just outlined, you know, that Rick Scott did as governor of Florida, guess what? Your 75 students opposed. So they're opposed to even what a Republican governor in Florida has to do in terms of his response to what's taken place at Parkland. And I think what you're seeing here is really an effort to sort of, first of all, there are only 75 versus hundreds of thousands that march around the country.
So they're in the minority.
In the polls show overwhelming support for gun control legislation, including universal background checks and the like. This is not, you know, in dispute. But I think what you're seeing here is the right saying, oh, we can produce some students who can march out because they understand the power of the students who went through the shooting at Parkland, Florida.
So you're saying this was controlled by the right?
Oh, gosh, you know, the sight of so many Make America Great hats again might have been a clue.
But that didn't happen in this other protest with other groups.
Everybody
Women's
supported.
March.
People came in to support. But I think what you see here from these students, this 75, is clear support, not only for Trump, but they use the kind of language that would make you think, gosh, I think these people are being somehow promoted or coached or something.
Oh, Juan.
But I mean, that was more transparent in the other protests because there were so many adults involved and so many celebrities giving money and so many groups behind them. That was obvious.
And the majority of people that were marching and walking out being not even the teenagers, but over that age, and you know, so it was very well
helping them in the green
orchestrated.
rooms too.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But it's on the other side. Now we're going to say, oh no, this is the fake side.
75? Wow.
Sometimes
those were
doing
kids.
the right thing is unpopular.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I can see it's very unpopular here.
It's always lonely in a crowd.
Isn't it? What does the mainstream media have against fair and balanced news? Greg breaks it down next.
If you have a life, then you probably missed this idiotic story making the rounds Sunday on Twitter and CNN. Same thing, really. In a nutshell, local anchors delivered a message that promised diligence in the fake news era. It's what you'd call a mission statement, but someone compiled the scripted missives, and it was hilarious.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish things that are true without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Oh my, they were all saying the exact same thing. Who does that remind you of? Hollywood, the mainstream media, the late-night comics? Yet how all these hypocrites whined, the same clacking jaws who get their talking points from Chuck Schumer and Media Matters are mad over this? Shut up. Read the actual script, and what do you find? Nothing in there that's pro or negative Trump, nothing about Democrats or Republicans. Instead, what you'll find is a call for balanced journalism, a concern over unverifiable stories on social media, and a criticism of biased broadcasting in general. That sounds pretty healthy to me. Yet our nation's hall monitor clutched his pearls.
Oh my gosh.
All these anchors and all these markets are required to read this script. It's attacking fake news, but really what it's doing, it's kind of like the Fox Fair and Balanced slogan. It's a way of saying we're fair, everybody else is biased. It's taking a page out of Trump's playbook.
Yeah, come on, Brian. Given CNN's obsession over Stormy, maybe you want to tape this script on the company fridge? And how could it be worse than CNN's mission statement?
This is an apple. Some people might try to tell you that it's a banana. They might scream banana, banana, banana over and over and over again. They might put banana in all caps. You might even start to believe that this is a banana. But it's not. This is an apple.
Who was high on mushrooms when they wrote that? But Stelter wasn't the only media mouth freaking out. So why was the howling media triggered by this? Well, maybe they feel threatened. People are seeing what they're really about, finally. Or maybe, just maybe, this is what angry people do on Easter Sunday, and that's even more depressing. So, Kimberly, as a mission statement, what exactly was so outrageous about that and the fact that they read it? It was a great audio visual of putting it together.
Right.
But
it was how they packaged it to put it together to make it sound like groupthink, group
like cultish,
etc. Very much like a cult or something. Like everybody drank the Kool-Aid, the perfect little packet mixture combination of little powder and water for a delightful, delectable, thirst-quenching treat. But if you look at it and actually examine the separate and disparate parts, you see that, in fact, this journal is trying to do their job. But I'm also then reminded in the juxtaposition of how good Fox News is. When you look at all the different little clips across, I'm like, we really do have the best people. I just have to say, yeah, well done.
Dana, I think Kimmel tweeted that this is a threat to democracy or something like that.
Well, I think you have to remember who it's coming from, right? So this is Sinclair. This is a group that is working on their merger right now. They're super ambitious. They want to be very competitive, including competitive with this network. And what's interesting is I think that the way that every news organization markets themselves as being the source for truth, the source for the best information, the one that you can trust the most. Look across all media, they all are saying that. Some just do it better than others. And I think that there is a lot of consternation about the Sinclair group because they're taking over in local media markets that aren't necessarily used to hearing that type of thing. So it does sound weird when it's all in lockstep. Contrast that with the new media campaign that Fox News is doing, which was super sophisticated, very different. And the thing that was really different about it, from my perspective, is that there was no script. So we went in there not knowing what we were going to be asked or what we were actually going to say. Maybe thought about it a little bit. But all of that is very spontaneous, and authenticity is what I think viewers are looking for. And if you're making fun of that thing, you could probably see that it was not authentic.
We just showed up with a few different color outfits. And then the rest was like, let it fly.
And, and it looks really good, and it's different, it's very modern. And
only changed 3 times.
Nobody was telling us, as every day here, no one tells us what to say, what to do, what to think, and that's why it's genuine, authentic, and it shows in the Pew Research and the polls that people trust us.
I still think this is unfair. I think this is a mission statement that they read, and so that's what you do.
Yeah, they read it because they can't afford to spend all the money that Fox spent on a really nice promotional campaign, and that's fine. They don't have the budget, so they did what they did. It's the same thing, as you said, as a CNN promo. You hit the nail on the head. CNN's threatened by it because they know that this Sinclair piece was targeting a place like CNN. This brings me back to the fake news awards. Let's remind everybody some of these awards. CNN, Don Jr. and WikiLeaks, false. The Mooch story about Russia, false. The fake Japanese feeding the fish video, false. Brian Ross, ABC tanked the market. What do all these things have in common? They're all fake news from the liberal mainstream media, and they were all done in order to hurt President Trump. So when you combine that with the fact that 90% of D.C. journalists are Democrats and 90% of the nightly evening news from the networks are against Donald Trump, people understand in this country that the mainstream media is biased, and they calculate that when they watch the news.
Last word, Juan.
Well, I think it's telling that Donald Trump immediately defended Sinclair. And I think that indicates to me how political this was. So you can say it was a mission statement from a corporate owner, but it's a corporate owner that really controls a lot of local media. And I think the understanding people have when they, if they tune into us, they say, well, that's national media. I understand the roles that are being played, left, right, all that. But when they turn on their local news to learn about tax assessments and the school board, I think they're surprised that this kind of lockstep, lack of independence would exist. And I think that was the power here, that this is not independent anymore. Your local news is now under control of somebody who is pro-Trump, and Trump is defending them because the message, although you see it as not having any bias, it fits the Trump message perfectly, which is you are being assaulted by fake news that's unfriendly to me and not to be believed. And so now coming in your local news, people see this as insidious.
I think it actually fits the Fox News message, fair and balanced. That's all they were saying. And number two, I would urge people to actually read the actual transcript, because when you look at the video, all you see and hear are the sounds. No one's actually listening. So I think that if you read it, it's not political at all, and it's not Trump, because remember, Trump came after Fair and Balanced.
No,
right?
But this is a context. You have to ask people to read it in the context. If they read it,
read the whole thing.
They'll say, well, it's no big deal.
Read the whole thing. All right, coming up, Kellyanne Conway responds to allegations she's the #1 leaker in the White House. A new book on the Trump White House making some headlines ahead of its release. This one written by Ron Kessler, who claims he knows where all those leaks are coming from. Kellyanne Conway.
I know that White House aides have seen texts that she has sent to other journalists dissing her colleagues, leaking material. So if you wonder, why there are so many leaks out of the White House, one reason is Kellyanne is the #1 leaker.
Oh my God. Fox asked Ms. Conway for her response this morning.
He knows, and he has said publicly and privately, who the leakers and the liars are and have been. Very happy that there's a lot less leaking in the White House. Leakers get great press, and one day, Abby, I will have my say.
Wow. So, Dana, you're a White House person. What do you think? What's the truth here?
She's right. Like, the book she writes is the one everyone's going to want to read, because she'll finally be able to be free and talk about it. I think she's indicating that there was somebody at the White House who is no longer there working at the White House who she thinks was the big leaker. My experience is that people who are the leakers are the ones who complain about it first and, like, feign, like, oh my gosh, did you see this leak? I'm like, oh, yeah, you're the leaker. She doesn't seem like the one who does that to me. But I've never been I don't know. I've never been the recipient of any White House leaks, so I don't know.
No, you would have been the leaker.
I know. Now, let me tell you, communications people don't leak, ever. Oh, you have to clean up the mess of everybody else.
That's a really good cover.
I don't think that's true, let me just say.
Really?
You're telling me White House press secretaries don't leak?
No, because you're on the record.
Oh, no, they leak. I can personally attest to this.
Not
Jesse,
with me.
No, not you. Right. I would say not you. Jesse, what's interesting to this is I know Ron Kessler, terrific reporter, but a big Trump supporter, and in fact, someone who's gone down to Mar-a-Lago with Trump, likes Trump a lot. All of a sudden, here he is attacking Kellyanne. What do you make of this?
I'm confused by it. Kessler is a good author. A lot of the times the books are salacious and gossipy, although he is a good author and he does sell a lot of books. I don't know what to think of it. I've always seen Kellyanne as a straight shooter, and she is very supported by the President of the United States and is one of, if not the best and most articulate defender of the President. So I don't think she's the leaker. I don't know that for a fact. But I do know if Dana was to leak, she would not leak to you, Juan.
Is that right?
Never.
Yeah. Oh,
never.
Excellent.
I'd be leaking to Jesse Waters.
Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Kellyanne's going to be on Waters World?
Yeah.
You hope so.
The truth teller. I call on the truth teller.
Yes, the truth teller. I mean, come on, everybody knows who the leakers were in the White House. Kellyanne, not one of them. And so I think when she has her day, to be able to tell the truth about what went on there, she's going to have a very revealing and not surprising story to tell in terms of what transpired there. So I've never known her to leak, to do anything like that, and I know other people who have, that's for sure.
So, Greg, the one last thing I'd say is that, according to Kessler, Ivanka and Jared are problems. That's what Kessler writes. And he said that they were involved with firing Comey and hiring Scaramucci.
I don't know. I actually believe Kessler on this, because I don't think that, what's her name again? Kellyanne. I don't think she's a leaker. I think she's a human being. And this White House is not a perfect White House. It's a human being White House. That means people talk and they complain and they vent. So I don't think anybody's actually leaking. They're just walking around venting and people hear it. By the way, I have an idea for a sponsored segment on this show. Call it Leak of the Day. It could be sponsored by Poise. It would be great.
Oh, my God.
All right.
Now,
gotta go.
Gotta go.
One more thing. You want to get out of here. One more thing up next.